What would a moral prediction look like? I mean, would it be to say that if you cause this person suffering, or if your actions cause this mind to experience suffering, then your actions are immoral?
See, I think that's the heart of the issue right there. That's one of the main reasons why people have resisted thinking that moral propositions should be understood as somehow comparable to ordinary a posteriori claims, like that it's raining outside. Because in fact, the propositions are not actually justified by appeals to evidence, because they don't actually generate predictive expectations. Although obviously some moral naturalists were attracted to naturalism as a solution to these meta-ethical quandaries precisely for the reason that they thought, well, maybe through naturalism we can actually come up with a science of morals and therefore give evidential support for moral claims. But see, I just don't see how naturalists have, it doesn't seem to me they figured out a way to solve that problem. And so then the other horn of the dilemma is to say, well, maybe this is the wrong way to go. We shouldn't look for evidence that the claim rape is right or rape is wrong. Instead, we should look at those as being analogous to other types of proposition which are not evidentially validated, things like mathematical claims. Is they want to say, look, you're right, rape is wrong is not the kind of thing that there can be evidence for. It doesn't actually generate predictive expectations the way that a claim like it's raining outside does. So in fact, that's the wrong way to think about moral propositions. The right way to think about moral propositions is for them to be analogous to claims like 2 + 2 = 4, which is not an evidentially supported claim. But you see, I think they end up impaled on the other horn there because there is actually no good analogy between moral propositions and, say, mathematical propositions. One reason is that in the case of mathematical propositions, we do actually have a way for justifying those claims, right? We have things like proofs, but we don't have anything like that in the moral case, right? I can't offer you a proof, right? You can just say, look, rape is wrong. I don't have any evidence to offer you, but that's okay. You know, it's not actually an evidential claim like it's raining outside. So really, it's more like the mathematical claim. But wait a minute. In the mathematical case, you can offer something like a proof.
What I was saying is that you can give arguments in defense of moral beliefs. It's just that these arguments are always going to appeal to other moral premises or other moral sentences.
But that's disanalogous to the mathematical case.
But it doesn't. That's okay. It doesn't need to be.
Well, the reason why somebody might question that, the reason is that the madman objection doesn't actually apply.
Yeah, but I think
mathematical case. And so what I was hoping,
I don't think the madman objection applies at all.
And what I was imagining is one of the motivators for intuitionists is they want to actually escape the madman objection.
I guess let's get back on the meta-ethical train here. How would you differentiate your notion, Lance, of what makes a thing wrong?
I would say that wrongness, for example, the wrongness of murder, is constituted of certain natural properties. Like the fact that
I thought you were an intuitionist.
I can be both. Okay, I'm an intuitionist about epistemology. That doesn't mean I'm a non-naturalist.
Oh, so you're a naturalist about the ontology of moral properties?
Yeah.
I see. So I take it you're some kind of synthetic naturalist?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, it seems to me that one way to view that problem is, let's say the natural property you take the good to be identical to is longevity, just for the sake of argument. So I understand then that the naturalist thesis is that they want to say, we have an independent concept of the good and we have an independent concept of longevity, and it turns out that the two coincide. Let's just make an analogy here with the Craig Adams view. Craig and Adams want to say we have an independent notion of God, or God's nature, let's say, and we have an independent notion of the good, and the two coincide. And so the analogy is supposed to be with water and H2O, right? We have an independent notion of what the properties of water are, and we have an independent notion of H2O, and it happens to be that the two coincide. That's the model we're dealing with. Okay. So now the problem, it seems to me, is, let's just look at the Craig Adams view, and then we can apply the same problem to the ordinary naturalist. So let's say I have a concept of the good that includes things like giving candy to babies, helping old ladies across the street, stopping murderers and rapists. And it turns out that all those things coincide with God's nature, and they're widely shared. You know, it's a very common notion of what types of things are good. Now, imagine that I had the view that homosexual marriage was good, and it turned out that God's nature was actually inimical to homosexual marriage. Now, it seems like it would be reasonable for me to say to somebody like Craig and Adams, well, why should I revise my concept of the good to be in line with God's nature, rather than just say to that extent God's nature is good? And it doesn't seem to me that Craig and Adams have the resources by which to answer that objection. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'm not sure if it's really an objection, but
well, no, because their
I mean,
claim is that what the good is synthetically identical to God's nature. But in fact, right, I have an independent concept of the good, and it's only imperfectly identical. So the question is, they want to say, well, look, you nonetheless are getting things wrong. Your concept of the good should be in line with God's nature. But it seems to me, right, I can just say, well, why shouldn't I say the opposite? That in fact, this is not a true synthetic identity. God is to that extent not identical to my concept of the good.
Well, but it's just I mean, the way you set things up, there's no answer, right?
But you see, that seems to me the same problem is going to apply in the ordinary naturalist case. If yeah, go ahead.
There could be an answer, and the answer.
How would that go?
The answer would just be whoever has more evidence, whoever has more reason. If Craig and Adams have really good reason and some strong arguments,
you're not understanding the problem. Problem is, why should I revise my concept of the good to be in line with God's nature, rather than say that there's nothing wrong with my concept of the good, and it's in fact God's nature which is falling short of the good?
There shouldn't be any revision of the concept, and I thought you were talking about just that you happen to have a belief that homosexual marriage was good or something. It doesn't follow out of the concept.
Part of my concept of the good is that homosexual marriage falls in that class of objects. Huh?
That seems very odd.
Why?
That doesn't seem like an analytic truth at all.
Wait, but it's not.
Marriage is good.
Okay. So what you want to say is that the good actually doesn't include within it any specific predicates? Is that the idea?
It might include some, but it's not something so complicated as homosexual marriage. I would imagine it'd be, a lot simpler predicates.
Well, I was using the example of giving candy to babies, and do you have a problem with those?
Okay, no, I guess you could say something like promoting happiness and welfare of conscious creatures. That seems pretty central to the concept of good.
Well, I mean, the point is, it doesn't really matter what most people believe. It's just going to be a question of what my notion is.
Well, okay, but then if your notion of goodness just makes it analytic that gay marriage is good, then you're obviously just not talking about the same thing as Craig is, or most other people are when they talk about goodness.
But the point is, right, that there's going to But the point is that there's going to be cases at the margins where the concept is not going to be perfectly shared across individuals. And so, see, the question is, why should we take it that we should revise our concept in one direction rather than another? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay. I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking. I'm having a hard time coming up with a concrete example in my head where this would actually occur, and it's kind of hard for me to answer it when it's post.
But you see, I think this is the fundamental problem with naturalist claims, is that naturalists don't have the resources by which to give justification that the synthetic identity that they want to draw is one that others ought to draw if their own concept imperfectly aligns with that of the first person.
I don't know.
One way to think about it is there are actual anti-naturalist arguments, like the rule following argument, or the moral twin earth argument, or the more Frege more pincer argument of Akil Dogrami. And I guess Sharon Street has an argument in Normativity and Water, this paper that she wrote, and so on. But see, I don't think we even need to go to the trouble to present those arguments to just show the fundamental problem there, which is that the naturalist proponent of one synthetic identity doesn't actually have conceptual resources within naturalism to favor their synthetic identity as against a rival one, even if there's a large degree of overlap across the two concepts.
Hey guys, I got to go to bed, but I just want to ask Jack real quick before I depart. Where do you self-describe as far as metaethics? Just out of curiosity.
I'm a proponent of sensibility theory, but I'm a relativist rather than an absolutist.